What happens when a young cop humiliates a Poggioloy veteran over his old Harley? You won't believe who shows up to turn the tables. I've ridden this old Harley Davidson since '82, and let me tell you, she's carried me through more than just miles. Her growl is my heartbeat. Her scars a map of my own. Each dent a story. Each patch on my leather jacket a memory of battles fought and brothers lost. That afternoon, as I eased her onto Dunfield Road in Turlock, California, the sun was dipping low, painting the cracked asphalt in shades of amber and gold. The air carried the sharp tang of diesel from a passing truck, mixed with the sweet bloom of jasmine from a nursery across the street. I was just passing through, headed to a little shop on Vantage Avenue to pick up a charm bracelet for my granddaughter, Lila. She's turning 9 tomorrow, and her smile's the only thing that keeps these old bones moving. Marla's Kitchen, a red brick diner with a flickering neon sign, called to me for a quick stop. Coffee, black, and a slice of their pecan pie, stale or not, sounded like the perfect break before the ride back to Modesto. I parked my bike, feeling the familiar twinge in my left leg, a souvenir from a shrapnel blast in Vietnam. 67. It slows me down, sure, but it don't stop me. Never has. I steadied myself, adjusted my faded jacket, its Marine Corps patches barely legible now, and limped toward the diner's glass door, my helmet tucked under my arm. Inside, the place was a time capsule. Checkered floor, vinyl stools, the clink of forks against plates. A jukebox in the corner hummed an old Merle Haggard tune, and the smell of fried onions and coffee filled the air. I slid onto a stool at the counter, setting my helmet down with a soft thud. The waitress, a young thing named Kira Vance, her name tag was crooked, like she'd slapped it on in a hurry, barely looked up from her phone. Her fingers danced across the screen, and I caught a glimpse of some bright-colored game before she sighed and shoved it in her apron. "Coffee black," I said, keeping my voice low but clear. "And a slice of pecan pie if you've got it." Kira rolled her eyes, not even trying to hide it. "Pie's probably stale by now. You sure you want it?" Her tone was sharp, like I was wasting her time. I gave her a small smile, the kind I've used for years to defuse folks who think an old man's just a bother. "Stale's fine, darlin'. I've eaten worse in foxholes." She didn't smile back, just scribbled my order on a notepad and shuffled off to the kitchen, muttering something I couldn't catch. I leaned back, my fingers tracing the edge of my helmet. The diner was half full, folks chatting over meatloaf and milkshakes. At the counter, a kid, no older than 10, with messy brown hair and a nervous grin, was fumbling with a handful of coins, trying to pay for a soda. A quarter slipped from his fingers, clattering to the floor and rolling under a stool. His face fell, like that coin was his whole world. I eased off my stool, ignoring the stab in my leg, and knelt down. The floor was sticky, probably from spilled soda, and I grunted as I fished out the coin. I handed it to the boy, who mumbled, "Thanks, mister," his cheeks red. "No trouble, son," I said, ruffling his hair before climbing back to my seat. Felt good to help, even in a small way. Reminded me of why I keep going, why I don't just fade into the shadows like some folks expect. Then the bell above the door jangled, sharp and loud, cutting through the diner's hum. 2 cops strode in, their boots heavy on the tile. The taller one, Officer Derek Lomax, his name tag gleamed like he polished it daily, had a swagger that screamed he owned the place. His partner, Officer Travis Boone, was shorter, younger, with a twitchy energy that made him look like he'd rather be anywhere else. Their radios crackled, and every eye in the diner turned to them. Then to me. Lomax's gaze locked on me like a hawk spotting prey. "You the guy on the Harley out front?" he asked, his voice loud enough to hush the room. I nodded, meeting his eyes. "That's my bike." "Got a report of a stolen vehicle matching that description," he said, stepping closer. His hand rested on his holster, casual but deliberate, like he was itching for a reason to use it. "Mind stepping outside?" The air shifted, heavy with tension. Forks paused, conversations died. Kira poked her head out from the kitchen, her phone back in hand, filming already. I felt the weight of every stare, but I kept my cool. I've faced ambushes in jungles thicker than this. A couple of small-town cops didn't scare me, but the accusation. Stolen? My bike? That hit like a punch to the gut. Ain't stolen, I said, my voice steady. Bought her in '82. Got the papers in the saddlebag. Boone shifted, his eyes flicking to Lomax. Let's see some ID first. I reached for my wallet, slow and deliberate, knowing any quick move could turn this ugly. I handed over my license, and Lomax snatched it, studying it like it was a forged dollar bill. Harlan Tate, he read aloud, loud enough for the whole diner to hear. Modesto, huh? That's a rough town. You sure you're not up to trouble? Just passing through, I said, keeping my tone even. Came for a gift for my granddaughter. Lomax smirked, tossing my license onto the counter like it was trash. Yeah, sure. Let's check that bike. The diner was a tomb now, every ear tuned to us. I slid off the stool, my leg screaming as I stood. I grabbed my helmet and led the way outside, feeling the eyes follow me. The crowd from the street had grown, maybe a dozen folks. Shoppers, kids, a delivery guy named Javier Ortiz unloading crates nearby. The patrol car's lights flashed, painting the lot in red and blue. My Harley sat where I'd left her, her chrome glinting under the diner's neon sign. I opened the saddlebag, pulled out a worn folder with my registration and title, and handed it to Boone. All in order, I said. Boone skimmed the papers, but Lomax wasn't looking. He circled my bike, kicking at the rear tire like he was testing a used car at a shady lot. This thing's a relic, he said, his voice dripping with mockery. You sure you didn't swipe it from some old fool's garage? My hands clenched, but I kept my face stone. That's my bike, officer. Paid for it with my own money after I got back from Nam. Lomax laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. Vietnam? Sure, Grandpa. You probably forgot where you parked it last week. A few folks in the crowd snickered, and I felt that old heat rise in my chest. Not anger, not yet, but the slow burn of a man who's seen too much to let this slide. I've stared down enemies who'd kill me without blinking, lost friends to gunfire and time, and now this punk in a badge thinks he can spit on that? I bit back the words I wanted to say. Not the time. Not yet. Boone handed back my papers, his voice low. Looks legit, Derek. But Lomax wasn't listening. He stepped closer, crowding me against my bike. I don't like your attitude, Tate. Maybe we run this through the system, see if you're as clean as you think. Do what you need to, I said, my eyes locked on his. I wasn't backing down, but I wasn't giving him an excuse either. He radioed in, his voice loud and performative. Yeah, run a Harlan Tate, Modesto. Let's see what we got. The crowd grew restless, whispering, pointing. A kid in a hoodie, maybe 16, started filming, grinning like this was his big break. Kira leaned against the diner's doorframe, still recording, her face blank. Javier, the delivery guy, watched with his arms crossed, his jaw tight. I caught his eye, saw the anger there, but I shook my head slightly. Don't get involved, son. This ain't your fight. Minutes crawled by, the sun sinking lower, my leg aching like hell. I thought of Lila, how she'd be waiting for me tomorrow, her eyes lighting up at that bracelet. This was just a hiccup, I told myself. I've survived worse. Then the radio crackled. No hits on Harlan Tate. Clean record. Lomax's smirk faltered just for a second. Boone looked relieved, but Lomax doubled down. Clean, huh? Doesn't mean you're not trouble. Maybe we take you in for questioning. Make sure. On what grounds? I asked, my voice sharper now. On my grounds, he snapped. Loitering, causing a scene. That's enough. The crowd murmured, some nodding, others shaking their heads. A woman in a sundress, Brenda I'd learn later, called out, He's not hurting anyone, let him go! But a loudmouth in a trucker hat, Corey something, shouted back, Bust him, officer, he's trouble! Lomax grabbed my arm, his grip tight. Hands on the bike, now! I complied, my palms pressing against the warm metal of my Harley. He patted me down, rough, tossing my wallet and keys into the dirt. Then he found the challenge coin in my pocket, a small, tarnished thing, engraved with my unit's insignia, a gift from Tommy Reese, a kid who didn't make it back from Khe-Sanh. "What's this?" Lomax said, holding it up like it was evidence. "Just a keepsake," I said, my voice low, the memory of Tommy's laugh cutting through me. Lomax snorted, tossing it into the dirt and grinding it with his boot. "Yeah, right. Probably stole that, too." The crowd gasped, and I felt something crack inside me. Not my resolve, but my patience. That coin was more than metal. It was Tommy. It was all of us who'd fought and bled. And this kid, this nobody, thought he could spit on it? I wanted to grab him, shake him, make him understand. But I didn't. I stood there, hands on my bike, and let the world see who he was. Javier took a step forward, his fists clenched, but I caught his eye again. "Not yet, son. Not yet. You won't believe who stood up for me when everyone else turned away." This is just the start. It gets heavier from here. The sky over Dunfield Road had turned a bruised purple, the kind of dusk that makes you feel the weight of the day. I stood there, hands pressed against my Harley, the metal still warm from the ride. My left leg throbbed, a jagged reminder of that shrapnel in '67, but it was nothing compared to the burn in my chest. Officer Derek Lomax had just tossed my challenge coin, Tommy Reese's coin, into the dirt, grinding it under his boot like it was trash. That coin was more than metal. It was a promise, a memory, a piece of a kid who never made it home. And this punk, this badge-wearing nobody, thought he could spit on it. I wanted to grab him, make him look me in the eye and see what he'd mocked. But I didn't. I stood still, my jaw tight, letting the crowd see him for what he was. The parking lot outside Marla's kitchen was a circus now. Folks spilling out from the diner and shops, drawn by the flashing lights of Lomax's patrol car. Their whispers buzzed like flies, some curious, some hostile, all judging. I felt every stare, every snicker, like needles in my skin. Javier Ortiz, the delivery guy who'd watched it all, stood at the edge of the crowd, his fists clenched, his face a storm of anger. I caught his eye and shook my head. "Stay out of it, son! This wasn't his fight. Not yet." But the way he glared at Lomax told me he wasn't one to stand idle long. Lomax paced, his boots crunching gravel, feeding off the attention like a cheap actor. His partner, Travis Boone, hovered nearby, looking like a kid who'd wandered into the wrong room. "Derek, the guy's clean," Boone muttered, his voice low, almost pleading. "His papers checked out. Maybe we let this go." Lomax shot him a look that could curdle milk. "You want to explain to the sergeant why we ignored a stolen vehicle report? Keep your mouth shut, Travis." He turned back to me, his smirk sharp as a blade. "You're coming with us, Tate. Loitering, resisting, whatever. I'll figure out the paperwork later." Resisting? I hadn't moved a muscle except to hand over my papers. Loitering? I'd been in the diner 10 minutes, ordered a coffee I never got to drink. This wasn't about justice. This was Lomax flexing, proving he could break an old man just because he felt like it. I've seen his kind before, cowards with power, itching to make someone bleed. "I ain't resisting," I said, my voice steady as stone. "You got no cause to take me in." The crowd stirred, a mix of voices rising. A woman in a sundress, Brenda Haskins, clutched her grocery bag and called out, "He's just an old man! Leave him be!" Her words were brave, but they drowned in the jeer of a burly guy in flannel, Corey Platt, who shouted, "If he's so innocent, why's he arguing? Lock him up!" Others nodded, egging Lomax on, their faces twisted with that ugly thrill folks get when they smell a fight. Inside the diner, Kira Vance leaned against the counter, her phone aimed at us, filming with the bored look of someone scrolling through a feed. I wondered what she'd caption this. Probably something snappy to get likes. The thought made my stomach turn. Back in my day, folks stood up when they saw wrong. Now they just record it. Lomax stepped closer, crowding me against my bike. His breath smelled of spearmint gum, and his eyes gleamed with that mean-spirited joy I'd seen in drill sergeants who loved breaking recruits. "You think you're tough, huh? Some washed-up biker with a sob story about Vietnam?" He kicked at the dirt where my coin lay, scattering dust. "I've heard it all before. Get in the car or I cuff you right here." My hands tightened on the bike's handlebars, knuckles white. I thought of Tommy, how he'd laughed the night before Kei-san, promising to buy me a beer when we got home. He never got the chance. That coin was all I had left of him, and Lomax had defiled it. I wanted to tell him what it meant, make him understand. But men like him don't listen. They just destroy. "Apologize for the coin," I said, my voice low, each word heavy. "Then we can talk." Lomax laughed, a harsh bark that echoed across the lot. "Apologize? To you? You're out of your damn mind, old man." He grabbed his cuffs, the metal glinting under the diner's neon sign. "Last chance. Walk, or I make you." Boone shifted, his hand twitching like he wanted to intervene. "Derek, maybe we—" "Shut it, Travis," Lomax snapped, cutting him off. He grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my jacket. "Hands behind your back." I didn't resist, but I didn't make it easy either. As he yanked me away from the bike, my bad leg buckled, and I hit the ground hard. Pain shot through my knee, a white-hot spike that stole my breath. The crowd gasped, some cheering, others shouting in protest. Brenda dropped her groceries, apples rolling across the gravel. "Stop it! He's hurt!" she cried. But Corey Platt blocked her, sneering. "Stay out of it, lady." Javier broke through, shoving past Corey. "Get off him!" he yelled, his voice raw. Boone intercepted, pushing him back. "Stay back or you're under arrest." I pushed myself up, dirt smearing my hands, my jacket torn at the elbow. My leg screamed, but I'd be damned if I let Lomax see me flinch. I locked eyes with him, my voice barely above a whisper. "You're making a mistake, son." He smirked, snapping the cuffs on my wrists. The metal was cold, biting into my skin. "Yeah? Tell it to the judge." He hauled me to my feet, shoving me toward the patrol car. The crowd parted, some filming, others jeering. Kira posted her video, her fingers flying over her phone. I caught the caption flashing, "Biker Grandpa versus Cops. Wild." The gravel crunched under my boots as Lomax dragged me forward. My leg was afire, each step a battle, but I kept my head high. I thought of Lila, how I'd promised her that bracelet. I thought of Naomi, my wife, gone 6 years now, who'd always said my stubborn streak would land me in trouble. Maybe she was right. But backing down? That wasn't me. Never would be. Then a voice cut through the chaos, sharp as a rifle. "What the hell is going on here?" Marla Gaines, the diner's owner, stood in the doorway, her wiry frame taut with fury. Her apron was dusted with flour, her gray eyes blazing. I'd known Marla for years. Her daddy ran the place when I was younger, and she'd always had a spine of steel. She'd been in the back, arguing with a supplier, but the noise had finally pulled her out. Boone froze, but Lomax didn't flinch. "Police business, Marla. Stay out of it." Marla crossed her arms, her voice booming. "This is my property, Derek, and that's my customer. You're turning my lot into a damn circus. What's he done?" "Suspected theft," Lomax said, shoving me into the back seat of the patrol car. The door slammed, the sound final. "And resisting." Marla's eyes narrowed to slits. "Theft? Harlan Tate? You've lost your mind." She turned to the crowd, her voice carrying like a general's. "Anyone see this man steal anything?" Javier raised his hand, his voice steady. "He didn't steal nothing. They're lying." A few others nodded, but most stayed silent, too scared to cross Lomax. Brenda stepped forward, her voice shaking. "He helped a kid with his coins. That's all I saw." Marla pointed at Javier. "You kid, come talk to me later." She glared at Lomax through the car window. "This ain't over, Derek." The patrol car peeled out, tires screeching, kicking up dust that stung my eyes. I sat in the back seat, cuffs cutting into my wrists, the vinyl seat sticky against my jacket. Dunfield Road blurred past, the neon of Marla's kitchen fading. My leg pulsed, my heart heavier than it had been in years. That coin was still in the dirt, Tommy's memory defiled. I'd come to Turlock for a simple errand, and now I was caged like a criminal. For what? Riding my bike? Being old, serving my country? At the Turlock police station on Palmwood Drive, the fluorescent lights buzzed like angry bees. Lomax dragged me inside, his grip bruising. The desk sergeant, Otis Randall, looked up, his bushy brows rising. "What's this?" "Troublemaker," Lomax said, pushing me toward a holding area. "Resisting, loitering, possible theft." Otis squinted at me, his voice dry. "He looks like my grandpa. You sure about this, Derek?" "Book him," Lomax said, already turning away. "I'll handle the report." They took my fingerprints, my mugshot, my belt, my keys. The process was cold, mechanical, stripping away who I was. I didn't argue, didn't plead. I'd learned long ago some fights are won by waiting. But inside, I was raging. Not at Lomax, not really. At the world that let this happen, that turned its back on men like me. In the holding cell, the concrete was damp, the air sour. Lomax leaned against the bars, smirking. "Should have walked away, old man. Now you're spending the night." I sat on the bench, my back straight, my eyes on his. "You'll regret this," I said, my voice a quiet promise. He laughed, strolling off. "Sure I will." Outside, I didn't know it, but Turlock was waking up. Javier and Marisol met Marla at the diner, telling her everything. Brenda joined them, her voice fierce. "I'm calling my cousin at the VFW. This won't stand." Marla nodded, already dialing. "I'm calling everyone I know. Derek's gone too far." Kira's video was spreading, comments piling up. Cops bullying a vet? Shameful. He was asking for it. I sat in that cell, alone, the cold seeping into my bones. I'd faced injustice before, but this was personal. And something told me the fight was just beginning. What happens next? Nobody saw it coming, but it's gonna shake everything up. Don't stop now. The holding cell in the Turlock police station on Palmwood Drive was colder than I expected, the kind of chill that seeps into your bones and reminds you of nights spent in foxholes, waiting for dawn. It was past 9, and the fluorescent lights buzzed like a swarm of angry hornets, casting harsh shadows on the concrete walls. My left leg ached, a dull, pulsing reminder of that shrapnel wound from '67, made worse by the fall outside Marla's kitchen. My wrists still stung from the cuffs, though they'd taken them off an hour ago. I sat on the hard bench, back straight, staring at a crack in the floor that looked like a map of nowhere. I'd been through worse. Jungle ambushes, hospital beds, the long years after losing Naomi. But this cut deeper. Being caged for nothing, my challenge coin, Tommy Reese's coin, defiled in the dirt, my name dragged through the mud. All I'd wanted was a coffee, a slice of pie, and a charm bracelet for my granddaughter Lila. Now here I was, locked up like some drifter who'd crossed the wrong line. I thought of Lila, her bright eyes and the way she'd hug me tomorrow, expecting that bracelet. I thought of Naomi, how she'd shake her head and say, "Harlan, you're too damn stubborn for your own good." Maybe she was right. But I'd fought for this country, bled for it, lost brothers for it. I'd earned the right to ride my Harley without some punk in a badge turning me into a spectacle. The memory of Lomax's smirk, the way he'd ground Tommy's coin into the gravel, it burned like a fresh wound. I didn't want revenge. Not really. I wanted justice. I wanted the world to remember what men like me had given. Outside, I didn't know it. But Turlock was coming alive. That kid Trey's video, and Kira's too, had spread like wildfire online, racking up thousands of views. Comments flooded in, some calling me a hero, others saying I deserved it. Marla Gaines, that tough old bird who owned the diner, was on the warpath, calling every contact she had. Veterans groups, the Turlock VFW, even a retired judge named Vernon Holt, who'd eaten at her counter for decades. Javier Ortiz and his sister Marisol were still at the diner, helping Brenda Haskins draft a petition to get me out. The air was thick with something brewing, something bigger than me. In the station, Officer Derek Lomax sat at a desk, typing up his report with that same smug grin I'd seen in the parking lot. He was spinning a tale, painting me as some belligerent old biker who'd mouthed off and resisted. Officer Travis Boone paced nearby, his face tight, like he was chewing on something sour. "Derek, you sure about this?" Boone asked, his voice low, almost a whisper. "The guy's got no record, and Marla's raising hell out there." Lomax snorted, not looking up. "Marla's just noise. And Tate? He's nobody. By morning, this'll be forgotten." He leaned back, cracking his knuckles, satisfied with his story. Boone didn't look convinced. I'd seen it in his eyes earlier. That flicker of doubt, like he knew this was wrong, but didn't have the spine to stand up. I've known men like him. Good at heart, but too scared to act. Part of me felt for him. The other part didn't care. He'd let Lomax drag me here, hadn't he? Then I heard it, a low rumble, like thunder rolling in from the west. It grew louder, shaking the walls, vibrating through the bench. I stood, ignoring the pain in my leg, and peered through the cell's narrow window. Headlights pierced the dark outside, a line of them, steady and unyielding. Humvees, at least a dozen, rolled up Palmwood Drive, their engines growling like a pack of wolves. Behind them, a crowd followed. Folks on foot, in pickups, their voices rising in a chant I couldn't yet make out. Boone, who'd stepped outside for a smoke, came running back in, his face pale as ash. "Sarge, you gotta see this." Desk Sergeant Otis Randall appeared at my cell, his bushy brows furrowed. "Tate, you got company. A lot of it." His voice was gruff, but there was a hint of respect in it, like he sensed something I didn't. "Company?" I asked, my voice steady despite the question swirling in my head. Before he could answer, the station's front doors flew open, slamming against the walls. A man strode in, his army uniform crisp, his captain's bars catching the light. Captain Marcus Drayton was tall, broad-shouldered, with a shaved head and eyes that could cut through steel. Behind him, a dozen soldiers in fatigues fanned out, their boots echoing like a drum roll. The air shifted, heavy with authority. Outside, the crowd, now over 100 strong, pressed against the windows, chanting, "Free Harlan! Free Harlan!" Lomax jumped to his feet, his smirk gone, replaced by a flicker of panic. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, his voice cracking. Drayton ignored him, addressing Otis like Lomax didn't exist. "Sergeant, I'm here for Gunnery Sergeant Harlan Tate. Release him immediately." His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of a man who didn't ask twice. He held up a folder, thick with papers, military records, commendations, a photo of me in dress blues from '69, my chest heavy with medals, including the Silver Star I'd never talk about. Otis blinked, glancing at Lomax. Sir, he's being held for—" "I know why he's here," Drayton cut in, his tone sharp enough to slice through the tension. "And you've got the wrong man. You arrested a decorated Marine, a hero who saved lives, on a baseless theft claim. You humiliated him, desecrated a challenge coin from his fallen squadmate. You're lucky I'm not here to drag you to a court-martial." The station went silent, the kind of quiet that presses against your eardrums. Boone shrank back, his shoulders hunched. The soldiers stood at attention, a wall of discipline that made Lomax look small. Outside, Javier, Marisol, Brenda, and Marla pushed to the front of the crowd, their faces lit with determination. News vans from Modesto and Fresno had rolled up, their cameras catching every moment. Otis unlocked my cell, and I stepped out, my leg protesting but my head high. I met Drayton's eyes and gave a nod. "Captain?" "Gunny," he replied, snapping a salute. The soldiers followed, their movements sharp, unified. I returned the gesture, my hand steady despite the ache in my body. It had been years since I'd saluted, but it felt right, like slipping into an old uniform that still fit. Lomax's face was red, his voice rising. "This is my station. You can't just barge in here." "Shut up, Derek," Otis snapped, his patience gone. He turned to Drayton, his voice softer. "How do you know Tate?" Drayton's jaw tightened, his eyes never leaving mine. "He saved my father's life on Hill 881 in Vietnam. Took shrapnel to shield him. My family owes him everything." His voice softened, just for me. When I heard what happened, I called in every favor I had. Fort Irwin, Camp Pendleton. Nobody says no to Gunny Tate. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. The weight of his words, the soldiers' salutes, the crowd's chants, it was more than I'd expected. I'd come to Turlock for a simple errand, not this. But as I stood there, the folder of my service records in Drayton's hand, I felt the past rising up, reminding the world who I was. Marla stormed through the doors, her apron still dusted with flour, her eyes blazing like a general's. She held up my challenge coin, cleaned and polished, retrieved from the dirt by Javier. "This belongs to a hero, Derek, not your ego trip," she shouted, her voice carrying over the crowd's roar. The chants grew louder, shaking the windows. Lomax backed against the desk, his bravado crumbling. Boone stepped forward, head bowed. "I'm sorry, Mr. Tate," he said, his voice barely audible. "I should have stopped it." I studied him, saw the shame in his eyes. "Learn from it, son," I said, my voice low but firm. Drayton handed me the folder. "Your service file, Gunny. Thought it might remind these folks who they're dealing with." He shot a look at Lomax. "Internal Affairs will be in touch." A reporter from Channel 47 Fresno shoved a microphone my way, her voice urgent. "Mr. Tate, what do you say about this injustice?" I paused, the words heavy in my throat. "I didn't fight for my country to be treated like a criminal in my own hometown," I said, my voice steady. "But I didn't fight for vengeance either. I fought so folks could do better, be better." The crowd erupted, applause and cheers drowning out the buzz of the lights. Brenda hugged Marisol, tears in her eyes. Javier pumped his fist, grinning. Marla wiped her face, her tough exterior cracking just a bit. Even Trey, the kid who'd thrown that soda can, stood at the back, his head down, his phone still. Lieutenant Carla Mendoza, the station chief, arrived, her faceplayer face tight with apology. "Mr. Tate, this was a mistake. We'll investigate and ensure it doesn't happen again." Drayton offered me a ride, but I shook my head. "I'll ride my own bike. Got a birthday to make." The soldiers escorted me to my Harley, the crowd cheering as I mounted it. Javier handed me the coin, and I slipped it into my pocket, feeling Tommy's memory settle back where it belonged. I nodded to them, Marla, Javier, Brenda, Drayton, the strangers who'd become my army, and rode off, the roar of my bike cutting through the night. Back at the diner, Marla hung a photo of me in my dress blues, a gift from Drayton. Below it, a sign, "Respect our veterans. Always." The petition against Lomax gained thousands of signatures, and by dawn, he was suspended, facing a hearing. I rode home to Modesto, the bracelet safe in my saddlebag, my heart steady. Lila was waiting, and I wasn't about to let her down.